On a frozen Montana highway, a former Navy SEAL slammed his brakes when he saw something that would change everything. Through the swirling blizzard, a figure stumbled along the roadside. Not just one person, but four. A man clutching children against the bitter wind. Their thin jackets no match for the storm that seemed determined to swallow them whole. The man who would save them was Ethan Hayes, 35 years old, broad shoulders carved by military discipline, steel gray eyes that had seen too much war and too little peace. His hands, scarred from years of covert operations, gripped the steering wheel as recognition hit him like a physical blow. The figure struggling through the snow looked achingly familiar, though he couldn't place why. Before you hear how their lives became forever intertwined, tell us where you are watching from, and if stories of courage and second chances move you, subscribe to Heart Stories. Your support means the world to us. The winter night pressed hard against the Montana landscape, wind carving white scars across the darkness as if the earth itself were shivering. Ethan had been driving for hours, returning from another sleepless visit to the VA hospital in Billings. The nightmares were getting worse. Memories of David Thompson haunting him with increasing frequency. David, his unit's communications specialist. David, who had died saving Ethan's life in Afghanistan 15 years ago. David, whose final words still echoed in Ethan's dreams. The blizzard had come from nowhere, transforming the familiar highway into a white tunnel of uncertainty. Ethan's truck, a reliable Ford built for harsh winters, pushed through the storm with steady determination. In the passenger seat, his service dog Rex, a 4-year-old German shepherd with amber eyes and unwavering loyalty, lifted his head with sudden alertness. Rex's low growl vibrated through the cab, not at the wind, but at something alive. Ethan instinctively slowed, his headlights cutting through the swirling snow to reveal what had triggered his partner's warning. A man staggered into view, tall but bent against the storm, dark hair plastered to his head by melting frost. Behind him, 3 children stumbled through snow that reached their knees, their small forms barely visible in their inadequate winter clothes. Ethan hit the brakes so hard the truck fishtailed before steadying. His heart surged with the same instinct that had once driven him to kick down doors and drag wounded teammates to safety. This wasn't a combat zone, but survival was survival, and these people were losing the battle against the Montana winter. The man, Marcus Thompson, 28 years old with sharp cheekbones and exhausted brown eyes, noticed the approaching headlights and instinctively moved to shield his children. His marriage had ended 3 months ago when Sarah discovered letters hidden in his workshop. Love letters. Letters addressed to David Thompson, his older brother, written by a soldier named Ethan Hayes. Letters that revealed a truth Marcus had spent years denying about himself. The divorce had been brutal. Sarah's lawyer had painted Marcus as unstable, using his sexuality against him in a state where family courts still harbored deep prejudices. The custody hearing was tomorrow, but Marcus knew he had already lost. Sarah's new boyfriend, a prominent local businessman, had money and influence. Marcus had only his truth, and that seemed to count for nothing in Carbon County. Tonight's escape into the storm hadn't been planned. The children, Tyler, Sophia, and little Emma had been crying after another fight with their mother about visiting Daddy. In a moment of desperation, Marcus had loaded them into his failing Honda and started driving, hoping to reach his sister in Bozeman before the weather turned deadly. The Honda had died 20 miles outside town, leaving them stranded on a highway that seemed to stretch into frozen eternity. Ethan stepped out into the slicing wind, Rex beside him, both moving with the controlled urgency of those accustomed to crisis. Marcus froze, recognizing something in the stranger's bearing that spoke of military training, but also sensing an inexplicable familiarity he couldn't place. Marcus's voice, when he finally spoke, was hoarse from cold and fear. "Please, my children, they need warmth." His words carried the weight of a man who had learned that pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. Ethan raised both hands slowly, palms open, his voice steady and calm. "Come with me. No one survives alone out here. Something in those words, or perhaps in the quiet authority behind them, made Marcus nod. He gathered his children with gentle urgency, helping them toward the warmth of Ethan's truck, while Rex positioned himself protectively between the family and the storm. As they drove toward Ethan's remote cabin, neither man spoke, but both felt the weight of destiny settling around them like the snow that continued to fall. They couldn't know that this moment of rescue would unravel 15 years of carefully buried secrets, or that their pain would become the foundation for something neither had dared hope for again. The cabin settled into fragile warmth as snow tapped restlessly against the windows. The children huddled under thick quilts, their cheeks finally losing the dangerous blue tint that had marked them on the roadside. Rex stretched near the fireplace, his alert eyes tracking every movement in the room. Marcus sat closest to the fire, his lean frame wrapped in one of Ethan's oversized flannel shirts. Steam rose from his damp hair as he watched his children slowly return to life. Tyler, his oldest at 9, maintained the protective stance he'd learned during the bitter custody battle. 7-year-old Sophia clutched a worn stuffed rabbit while her watchful eyes darted between the two men. Little Emma, barely 4, had finally stopped shivering enough to smile at Rex's gentle presence. Ethan moved quietly through the cabin's simple rooms, bringing blankets, preparing soup, offering the kind of practical care that required no words. His movements carried the precision of military training, but also a tenderness that spoke of deep loss. Marcus noticed the way Ethan's hands trembled slightly when he thought no one was watching, the way his gaze occasionally drifted to a framed photograph turned face down on the mantel. When the children finally drifted into the first peaceful sleep they'd known in weeks, Marcus found himself alone with the man who had saved them. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Marcus spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was married to Sarah for 6 years. She gave me beautiful children and a life that looked perfect from the outside. But I was living a lie." He paused, gathering strength to continue. 3 months ago, she found letters I'd hidden. Love letters from 15 years ago. Letters from a soldier to my brother David. Ethan's face went pale, his coffee mug freezing halfway to his lips. Marcus continued, unaware of Ethan's reaction. "David died in Afghanistan when I was barely 18. I never got to tell him how sorry I was for pushing him away when he came out. I was young, scared, raised in a town where being different meant being dangerous. When Sarah read those letters, she realized what I'd been running from my whole life." The pain in Marcus's voice was raw, unfiltered. The divorce was vicious. "She used my sexuality against me, made it sound like I was unstable, unfit to raise children. Her lawyer painted me as confused, damaged, a threat to their moral development. Tomorrow there's a custody hearing, but I already know I've lost them." Ethan set down his mug with shaking hands. The photograph on the mantel seemed to burn in his peripheral vision. David's face, laughing and alive, taken just weeks before the IED that changed everything. "Your brother saved my life," Ethan said quietly. "We were on patrol near Kandahar. Roadside bomb took out our convoy. David pulled me from burning wreckage, carried me 2 miles to safety while under fire. He died from his injuries 3 days later." Marcus looked up sharply, recognition dawning in his exhausted eyes. Ethan's voice cracked. "I wrote him letters for months before he died. Told him things I'd never told another human being. How scared I was of who I was becoming. How the military's don't ask, don't tell policy was killing me inside. How much his acceptance meant when my own family had turned their backs." The room fell silent except for the crackling fire and the soft breathing of sleeping children. "David talked about you constantly," Ethan continued. "His little brother, who was too smart for his own good, too kind for the world's cruelty. He was planning to come home on leave, to tell you everything. About us, about who he really was, about how much he loved you despite the distance that had grown between you." Marcus's eyes filled with tears he had held back for 15 years. "I never knew. I thought he hated me for how I treated him when he came out. I was 17, terrified of what people would think of our family. He never hated you, Ethan said firmly. He understood fear better than anyone, but he also believed people could change, could grow beyond their fear. That's why he kept fighting, both over there and for the right to love openly. Rex lifted his head, sensing the emotional shift in the room, and moved to rest his muzzle against Marcus's knee in quiet comfort. The irony, Marcus said with bitter laughter, is that losing custody of my children might be the push I needed to finally stop hiding. Sarah's lawyer asked if I was homosexual in open court. For the first time in my life, I answered honestly, yes. The room went silent, but something inside me felt free for the first time in years. Ethan recognized that feeling, that moment when pretending becomes more painful than truth. His own coming out had happened in a military hospital bed, whispering confessions to David while morphine dulled the pain of shattered bones, but not the ache of a shattered heart. Snow continued falling outside, but inside the cabin, two men who had been carrying pieces of the same broken story began to understand that healing sometimes comes through the most unexpected connections. Understanding that grief shared becomes lighter, and that love honored becomes stronger than the fear that once kept it hidden. The storm eased by morning, leaving a crystalline world that sparkled under weak Montana sun. Marcus moved quietly through Ethan's cabin, helping prepare breakfast while the children slowly awakened. There was something domestic and natural about their rhythm, as if they'd been sharing space for years rather than hours. Ethan worked outside, splitting firewood with methodical precision. Each swing of the axe carried weight beyond the physical, working out tensions that seemed to have lived in his shoulders for 15 years. Rex stayed close, occasionally venturing to the tree line before returning to his post. Inside, Marcus discovered a small alcove off the main room that served as Ethan's study. Military commendations hung on one wall alongside photographs of desert landscapes and fellow soldiers. But it was a wooden box on the desk that drew his attention. The lid was slightly open, revealing a corner of familiar stationery. With trembling fingers, Marcus lifted the lid completely. Inside lay dozens of letters in his brother's handwriting, arranged chronologically and preserved with careful attention. But beneath David's letters to Ethan were others, letters in Ethan's precise script, addressed to David Thompson, stamped but never sent. Marcus picked up one dated just days before David's death. As he read, the cabin seemed to fade away, replaced by the raw honesty of a soldier's final confession to the man he loved. Ethan had written about his plans for after the war, about a cabin in Montana where they could build something real together, about his dream of David meeting his family and feeling accepted in ways the military had never allowed. The sound of boots on the porch broke Marcus from his reading. Ethan entered, snow dusting his shoulders, and froze when he saw Marcus holding the letters. Those were private, Ethan said quietly, but without anger. These letters, Marcus whispered, they're love letters, real ones. David never told me he'd found someone who loved him like this. Ethan moved slowly across the room. I couldn't send them after he died. Couldn't throw them away either. They're all I have left of what we planned to build together. Marcus held up another envelope, this one bearing his own name in David's familiar handwriting. This is addressed to me. It's never been opened. Ethan's face went pale. He asked me to mail it if anything happened to him. I couldn't. I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd blame me for his death. Afraid you'd see our relationship as the distraction that got him killed. Afraid you'd look at me the way your parents did when they found out about David. Marcus's hands shook as he opened the letter. David's final words to his little brother filled 3 pages with an honesty that cut through 15 years of grief and regret. Marcus, the letter began. If Ethan is reading this to you, then I didn't make it home to say these words in person. I need you to know that loving him didn't make me reckless. It made me careful. It gave me something worth surviving for. But some things are bigger than our individual survival. The letter continued, describing David's love for both his brother and Ethan, his hope that they would somehow find each other after the war, His belief that family could be built on love rather than blood, on choice rather than obligation. I know you're probably angry with yourself for how we left things when I deployed. Stop. You were a kid, scared and trying to survive in a world that punished difference. I never blamed you for that. But Marcus, I need you to promise me something. Don't let fear make you waste the years I won't get to live. Don't let other people's prejudices keep you from finding love. And if you ever meet Ethan Hayes, please know that he made your brother's final months meaningful in ways I can't fully explain. Marcus finished reading as tears streamed down his face. The children had awakened and gathered in the kitchen, but neither man moved to join them. He knew, Marcus said finally. Somehow he knew we'd find each other. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. There's something else. Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. The custody hearing is today. I need to get back to town, but I don't want to face it alone anymore. You won't have to, Ethan replied. David made me promise to look out for his family. I should have found you years ago. Rex appeared in the doorway, tail wagging him, as if sensing that something important had shifted. The children followed, Tyler's protective expression softening as he saw the tears on both men's faces. Dad, Tyler asked quietly, are you okay? Marcus knelt to embrace his son, then looked out at Ethan. I'm better than I've been in a long time, but we have somewhere important to be. As they prepared to leave the cabin, Marcus tucked David's letter carefully into his jacket pocket. For the first time since his divorce began, he felt ready to fight not just for his children, but for the kind of life his brother had dreamed possible, the kind of life built on truth, sustained by love, and strengthened by the courage to stand against those who would diminish it. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Marcus finally understood he wouldn't be traveling it alone. The Carbon County Courthouse stood like a fortress against the gray Montana sky, its weathered brick facade bearing witness to decades of family disputes and broken dreams. Marcus sat in his truck outside the building, engine running, watching his breath cloud the windshield. Beside him, Ethan waited with the quiet patience of someone accustomed to life-altering moments. In the back seat, the children whispered among themselves, sensing the weight of what was about to unfold. Tyler had insisted on coming, his 9-year-old wisdom understanding that this day would determine their future. Sophia clutched her stuffed rabbit while Emma asked endless questions about the big building with tall windows. Sarah's already here, Marcus observed, noting the familiar silver SUV parked near the entrance. Probably arrived early to make sure she looked like the responsible parent. Ethan studied the building's imposing entrance. Military taught me that battles are won by those who prepare best and refuse to back down when the fighting starts. Marcus managed a weak smile. I'm not sure how much combat experience translates to family court. More than you'd think. Both require you to know what you're fighting for and refuse to let fear make your decisions. As they approached the courthouse, Marcus spotted familiar faces from his former life. Neighbors who had once invited his family to barbecues now avoided eye contact. Former friends clustered near the entrance, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. The whispers started before they reached the door. That's him, the one Sarah divorced. Can't believe he's putting those kids through this. Should have stayed in the closet if he wanted to keep his family. Tyler heard the comments and instinctively moved closer to his father. Dad, why are they saying mean things? Because some people fear what they don't understand, Barwang, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the hurt in his eyes. But their fear doesn't get to define our family. Inside the courthouse, Sarah Thompson sat with her legal team, a picture of composed confidence. Her lawyer, James Morrison, was known for his ruthless tactics in custody cases. Beside Sarah sat her new boyfriend, William Chen, a local bank president whose presence was clearly calculated to demonstrate stability and financial security. Sarah's appearance was carefully orchestrated, conservative suit, modest jewelry, hair pulled back in a style that suggested both professionalism and maternal warmth. When she saw Marcus enter with Ethan, her expression hardened. Who's the stranger? Morrison asked quietly. I don't know, but we'll use it against him. Shows poor judgment. Bringing unknown men around the children. Well, yeah, Judge Patricia Williams presided over the hearing with 30 years of family law experience etched into her weathered face. She had seen too many children caught in the crossfire of adult conflicts to harbor illusions about the complexity of custody decisions. Morrison opened with a devastating portrayal of Marcus as unstable and dangerous. Your Honor, Mr. Thompson's recent behavior demonstrates a pattern of poor decision-making that puts these children at risk. His sudden declaration of homosexuality, his abandonment of family responsibilities, and his reckless endangerment of minor children in last night's blizzard all point to a man in crisis. Marcus's court-appointed attorney, fresh from law school and clearly overwhelmed, offered only weak objections to Morrison's characterizations. Sarah took the stand with practiced emotion, describing her fear for the children's safety and moral development. I don't want my children exposed to lifestyle choices that contradict our family values. Marcus has become someone I don't recognize, someone who puts his own desires above their well-being. When Marcus was called to testify, the courtroom fell silent. He stood slowly, straightening his shoulders in a way that reminded Ethan of David preparing for a dangerous mission. Your Honor, 15 years ago, my brother David died serving this country in Afghanistan. He was gay, and I was too young and too scared to accept that part of him before he left. I've spent every day since regretting my cowardice. Morrison objected, but Judge Williams allowed Marcus to continue. 3 months ago, my wife discovered letters that revealed my brother's relationship with a fellow soldier. She also discovered that I had finally begun accepting the part of myself I'd spent years denying. Yes, I'm gay. Yes, my marriage ended because of that truth. But I refuse to teach my children that love is something to be ashamed of or hidden. Marcus's voice grew stronger as he continued. Last night, I made a mistake. I took my children into a storm because I was desperate and scared. But that same storm led us to Ethan Hayes, the soldier who held my dying brother's hand in Afghanistan, the man who loved David enough to write him letters for months, who's carried guilt and grief for 15 years, who saved our lives last night not because he had to, but because helping people in need is who he is. The courtroom murmured at this revelation. Several people in the gallery who knew of the Hayes family's military service began to shift their perspectives. Ethan was called as a character witness. His military service record spoke for itself, but his quiet testimony about David's courage and Marcus's strength as a father carried weight that surprised even Morrison. I've seen Marcus Thompson in crisis, Ethan stated clearly. I've seen him put his children's needs above his own fear, comfort them when they were scared, protect them when they were vulnerable. These children don't need to be saved from their father. They need to be protected from a system that would punish him for honesty. Judge Williams called a brief recess, during which several veterans who had served with David approached Ethan in the hallway. Word spread quickly through the small courthouse community about the connection between the Thompson brothers and the local war hero. When court reconvened, Judge Williams delivered her decision with careful deliberation. This court recognizes that family structures can take many forms, and that a parent's sexual orientation alone does not determine fitness for custody. Mr. Thompson retains primary custody of his children. Ms. Thompson will have structured visitation rights. The decision sent shockwaves through the gallery, but Judge Williams wasn't finished. However, this court strongly recommends family counseling for all parties to help these children navigate this transition with minimal trauma. Love, in all its forms, should be the foundation of family, not its destruction. As they left the courthouse, Marcus felt the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. The children ran ahead, their laughter echoing off the courthouse steps, while Ethan walked beside him in comfortable silence. They had won more than a custody battle. They had claimed the right to build a family on truth rather than fear, on love rather than convention. Sometimes justice requires courage, and healing demands the willingness to stand against those who would diminish love rather than celebrate it. Spring arrived in Montana like a shy promise, painting the landscape with tentative shades of green, while patches of snow lingered in the shadowed places. The custody victory had been just the beginning. Over the following months, Marcus and his children had made the cabin their home, filling Ethan's quiet spaces with laughter, arguments, homework sessions, and the beautiful chaos of family life rebuilding itself. The transformation wasn't immediate or effortless. Tyler struggled with anger toward his mother and confusion about his father's relationship with Ethan. Sophia experienced nightmares that required gentle reassurance and patient bedtime stories. Little Emma adapted with the remarkable resilience of youth, accepting Ethan and Rex as natural additions to their world. Ethan discovered that sharing space meant compromising on everything from mealtimes to television choices. His orderly military existence gave way to soccer cleats by the door, art projects covering the kitchen table, and conversations that stretched late into the evening. But love, they learned, grows in unexpected directions when given room to breathe. One afternoon in late May, they decided it was time to visit David's grave. The drive to Riverside Cemetery was quiet, each person lost in thoughts about memory, loss, and the strange ways life interweaves separate stories into something larger than their individual parts. David's headstone bore his military honors alongside simple words, "Beloved son and brother." Marcus knelt to place fresh wildflowers while Ethan stood nearby, finally ready to say goodbye to guilt and hello to gratitude. "Uncle David," Tyler said suddenly, addressing the gravestone with the matter-of-fact honesty of childhood, "I wish I could have met you. Dad says you would have liked us." Marcus smiled through his tears. "He would have loved you beyond measure." The children explored the cemetery grounds while the two men sat quietly beside David's resting place. Rex lay watchful nearby, understanding the solemnity of the moment without needing explanation. "I used to come here and apologize," Marcus said finally. "Apologize for not being brave enough to accept him when he was alive. Now I want to thank him for loving you, for bringing you to us, for believing we could find each other even when it seemed impossible." Ethan placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "David always said family wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up for each other when life got hard." As summer deepened, they made official what their hearts already knew. The wedding was small, held at the cabin with Pastor Williams officiating. The same judge who had granted Marcus custody now witnessed their vows, along with several veterans from Ethan's unit, neighbors who had become allies, and the children who had become the foundation of their new beginning. Marcus wore his father's wedding ring alongside a new band engraved with the coordinates marking the spot where David had fallen. Ethan's ring bore a line from one of David's letters, "Love is the courage to build something together." The ceremony was simple, meaningful, and utterly their own. Rex served as an unofficial ring bearer, while the children read poems they had written about family, love, and the importance of accepting people as they are rather than as others expect them to be. But their most important project came later that year. Using David's military death benefits and contributions from the local veteran community, they established the Thompson Hayes Center in downtown Willow Creek. The center provided support services for rural LGBTQ youth and families, offering counseling, legal assistance, and safe spaces for those who often felt invisible in small-town America. Tyler, now 10 and fierce in his convictions, helped design the center's youth programs. "Kids shouldn't have to choose between being honest and being safe," he declared during the planning meetings, earning applause from adults who recognized wisdom beyond his years. The center's opening drew unexpected support from across Montana. Military families who understood sacrifice, religious leaders who preached love over judgment, and community members who had learned that diversity strengthens rather than weakens the bonds that hold small towns together. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the family therapist who had helped them navigate their complicated beginning, spoke at the dedication ceremony. "Healing happens when we stop running from our authentic selves and start building lives that honor both our individual truth and our commitment to each other." On quiet evenings at the cabin, when homework was finished and dinner dishes cleared, Marcus and Ethan would sit on the porch watching their children play in the yard that had once known only solitude. Rex would patrol the property borders while the mountains stood sentinel in the distance, unchanged by human drama, yet somehow blessed by human love. Do you think David knew, Marcus asked one such evening, that we'd find each other, that his death would somehow lead to all this life? Ethan considered the question seriously. I think David knew that love has its own intelligence, that people who honor the same kind of courage tend to recognize each other, even across years and circumstances that should keep them apart. The children's laughter drifted across the evening air as Tyler helped Emma climb the oak tree while Sophia read beneath its branches. Simple moments, unremarkable except for their profound normalcy. What started with a rescue in a Montana blizzard had become something neither man could have imagined, a family built on authenticity rather than pretense. Strengthened by shared loss and sustained by the daily choice to love courageously. Sometimes the most powerful revolutions happen quietly, in small-town courtrooms and rural living rooms, when ordinary people decide that truth matters more than comfort and that love deserves to be honored rather than hidden. What part of Marcus and Ethan's story resonates most deeply with your own journey toward authentic living? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to Heart Stories for more tales of courage, healing, and the families we create when we finally stop running from who we're meant to be.